A submissive woman do for her man?
Everything.
What does that mean?
You know, like packing his bag, unpacking his bag.
Damn! Stop treating people like the hell.
As long as I've been with Jazz, Jazz has not been the only person that I've had sex with.
He's spoiled. And you know, when I talk to my girlfriends about it, they're always like, oh, how you guys doing? And I'm just like, girl, he's rotten. I'm like, he's spoiled rotten. Like, he's rotten.
You will, and I say this with all respect and love, what I'm about to say next, okay, Cam? But you will selfishly create broken families.
Jazz allows me to speak to her, and we are able to have banter. And I hate that I embarrassed her, because no woman ever wants to admit that openly.
But what? I'm sorry, I want to make
that their person has not always been with them. I'm not married, right? I have beautiful children.
How many?
8.
I didn't do my research. I thought it was 4, but 8. Okay.
No, baby.
Cool.
It's
By how
8.
many women?
3.
Then in a sit down with Dr. Cheyenne Bryant, he admitted,
and this is the kicker, I want more. Now,
by multiple women? What's the intent?
I just want God to bring her. I just want God to bring her.
Oh, okay. And you have, so you just.
Because my point is this, my desire to get married is lower than my fear of divorce. So, as you had said, Dr. Bryant, you said it, I didn't say it, I will agree. I'm just taking my time.
Grew up in a 3-parent household, my mom, my father, and my grandmother. And I knew what a woman was, not a bad bitch.
Okay, what's the difference?
A woman. Woman for me is handling your own, but knowing how to cater to a man's needs. And I think a lot of times when you get that aesthetic of like, I'm a boss bitch, like I'm a this, I'm a that. No, baby, like, but you can't cook.
Okay.
You don't know when to be quiet. You don't know how to allow a man to lead.
It started with a single Instagram post, raw, emotional, and so brutally honest it stopped everyone mid-scroll. Jasmin Brown, pregnant with Cam Newton's child, admitted she'd be terrified to raise a son like him. And just like that, the cracks in their glossy love story exploded into full-blown chaos. For years, Jasmin built her brand clowning pick-me women, the ones who sacrificed everything for a man who gave nothing back. But now, the internet says she's become the very thing she used to mock. And when you stack her words against Cam's track record, 9 kids, 3 women, and an admitted fear of marriage, the whole thing feels less like a love story and more like a slow-motion car crash everyone saw coming. It only took one Instagram post to send the internet into a frenzy. A single caption, written late at night by Jasmin Brown, and suddenly the polished image of her relationship with Cam Newton cracked wide open. In a rare moment of brutal honesty, Jasmin admitted she'd be terrified to have a son with him. Her exact words, "If God gave me a son, I'd be so nervous because I feel like I subconsciously raised him to be a man I could only dream of but never experienced." And that's traumatic. Now, let's be real. That doesn't sound like some random passing thought. That's not the kind of thing you write if you're just venting about life. That sounded like a wound, like a woman sitting alone with her thoughts, staring down at her pregnant belly and realizing she's scared of the very man she's building a family with. It read less like a caption and more like a cry for help. And here's the kicker. Jasmin isn't just in a situationship with Cam. She's pregnant with her 2nd child by him, his 9th child overall. Let that sink in for a second. She's literally doubling down with a man who has already shown the world exactly who he is. So the question that instantly exploded online was, why now? Why make a confession this raw, this vulnerable, while carrying the child of the man you're essentially shading? Because the contradiction is brutal. On one hand, she's posting couple pictures, smiling at events, selling this idea of a united family. On the other, she's admitting publicly that she wouldn't even want her son to grow up and become a man like Cam. That's not just shade, that's a full-on dagger to the heart of their relationship. And when people saw that, they didn't just read it as Jasmin having doubts. They read it as the mask slipping. What made this post hit so hard wasn't just the words themselves, but the timing. Jasmin has spent the last 2 years fiercely defending Cam against critics, building him up as her man, her protector, her provider. And yet here she was, admitting that deep down, she doesn't see him as the kind of man she'd want her own son to emulate. That paradox is what made the internet stop dead in its tracks. It's the kind of messy, raw truth that turns private doubts into public spectacle. Because let's call it what it is. This wasn't just a confession about motherhood or parenting fears. This was Jasmin exposing the cracks in her own relationship, probably without even realizing how loud it sounded to everyone else. And once you strip away the glossy captions and podcast sound bites, you're left with the uncomfortable reality. She's having a second baby with a man she just admitted she wouldn't want her son to become. And that's the breaking point. That's the moment where fans stopped seeing Jasmin as the comedian, the influencer, the girl who used to clown pick-me women, and started seeing her as one of them. To really understand Jasmin's breakdown, you have to look at the man at the center of it all, because Cam Newton's history with women is not some mystery. His track record is long, public, and messy, and honestly, Jasmin can't say she didn't know what she was signing up for. Let's start with his longtime ex, Kia Proctor. She was with Cam through the prime of his NFL career. They built a home together, had 4 kids, and from the outside, it looked like a solid family unit. But here's the thing. Despite nearly a decade together, despite raising an entire household side by side, Kim never put a ring on it. No proposal, no marriage, not even a whisper of forever. And eventually, after years of playing house while Cam was busy stacking headlines and side scandals, Kia finally did what Jasmin hasn't. She packed her things and walked away. But of course, it didn't end clean. Cam turned the breakup into a battlefield. Instead of quietly co-parenting, he dragged Kia into court. He filed for paternity, custody, and, in one of the pettiest moves we've ever seen from a pro athlete, he even demanded back the Bentley he once gifted her. Yes, the mother of 4 of his children, and he still wanted to repossess the luxury car he gave her. To the public, it was more than just about a car. It looked like a power play, a way to remind Kia that no matter how many years she put in, Cam was still in control. And the Bentley fiasco was just one piece of a much bigger pattern. Because if you listen to Cam in his own words, he doesn't even hide what he's about. On his podcast, Funky Friday, he flat out admitted marriage isn't on his radar. My desire to get married is lower than my fear of divorce, he told Dr. Cheyenne Bryant. Translation? He's perfectly fine fathering children left and right, but locking it down legally? Absolutely not. And he didn't stop there. In that same conversation, he confessed he actually wants more kids by multiple women. Not just more children, but specifically from different mothers. He framed it as waiting for God to bring him his wife. But in the meantime, he's out here creating what one psychologist bluntly told him are broken families. And Cam, instead of pushing back, just nodded like it was a fair assessment. Then there is infamous views on women. For years, Cam has doubled down on this idea that the perfect woman is submissive. He said it on podcasts, in interviews, even on his own platform. A woman who cooks, cleans, keeps quiet, and lets her man lead. In his book, a woman who can't whip up a meal or stay in her lane simply doesn't qualify as a real partner. The internet dragged him for it every single time, but Cam has never once backpedaled. If anything, he's leaned harder into that traditional, borderline patriarchal rhetoric, almost daring critics to come for him. So when you stack all of this together, the 4 kids with Kia, the Bentley lawsuit, the public disrespect, the "I want more kids" by multiple women's speeches, the anti-marriage stance, the submissive woman philosophy, it paints a very clear picture. Cam Newton has told the world exactly who he is, and he hasn't changed. Not for Kia, not for Jasmin, not for anyone. And that's what makes Jasmin's situation so tough to watch. Because if anyone should have seen this coming, it was her. This isn't a case of being blindsided. Cam's red flags weren't hidden. They were flying on full display in podcasts, interviews, and court documents. Jasmin didn't stumble into the fire. She walked into it with her eyes wide open. And now, the very reality she used to clown other women for living and has become her own. If Cam Newton's history was predictable, then Jasmin Brown's transformation was the real shocker. Because let's not forget who Jasmin used to be before she became Cam's baby mama. She wasn't just another influencer. She was the loudest voice clowning pick-me women online. Her whole comedy brand was built on roasting women who bent over backwards for men who didn't deserve it. She was the self-proclaimed anti-pick-me queen, the woman who made viral sketches dragging submissive girlfriends who cooked, cleaned, and played housemaid just to earn scraps of affection. Her message was sharp, unapologetic, and hilarious. Don't be the woman carrying the whole relationship while your man sits back and benefits. Don't play therapist, chef, and mother to a grown man. Demand reciprocity, demand respect, and never, under any circumstances, let yourself become the doormat. That's the Jasmin her followers fell in love with. That's the Jasmin who crowned herself the champion of women tired of doing the most for the bare minimum. And yet, fast forward to her life with Cam Newton, and suddenly it was like we were watching Jasmin in a parallel universe. Because the same woman who once told her followers to never cater to a man flipped the script completely. In interview after interview, Jasmin bragged about being Cam's full-time caretaker. She described her role as submissive, servant, even joyful servitude. She went from dragging pick-me behavior to openly praising it. She boasted about unpacking and repacking his bags like a personal assistant, making sure he never lifted a finger. She talked about scratching his back to sleep every single night, to the point where she could recognize his breathing patterns when he drifted off. She even said her greatest joy was watching him eat a meal she cooked or seeing him sleep peacefully because of her care. And in one viral clip, Jasmin flat out said, "My love is my superpower. If I love you, I can heal you. I find joy in being your rest." For fans who had followed her career, it was a jaw-dropping 180. The Jasmin who once mocked women for being submissive was now proudly wearing the exact label she used to ridicule. And that's when the internet pounced. The dragging was brutal, relentless, and honestly, kind of inevitable. One viral comment summed up the collective reaction perfectly. Not her making single moms, just like Nick Cannon. That one line exploded across social feeds because it captured exactly what everyone was thinking. Jasmin hadn't just become submissive, she'd become another baby mama in Cam's growing rotation. Another user wrote, "Sis used to roast pick-me's for free. Now she's Cam's full-time pick-me with benefits." And the critiques didn't stop there. People called her Cam's Nick Cannon baby mama in training, accused her of hypocrisy, and reminded her of the countless times she told other women not to accept this exact dynamic. The irony was just too sharp to ignore. Because this wasn't just a slight contradiction. This was a full-on role reversal. Jasmin had once built a platform out of mocking women who did exactly what she now brags about doing. And in the world of the internet, nothing is more unforgivable than a public figure who preaches one sermon and then lives out the opposite. To Jasmin's critics, she wasn't just in a toxic relationship. She had betrayed her own brand. And maybe that's why her breakdown hit so hard. Because fans weren't just disappointed in Jasmin the woman. They felt betrayed by Jasmin the comedian, Jasmin the voice for women, Jasmin the anti-pick-me queen. Watching her morph into the very stereotype she used to torch felt less like a personal choice and more like a public hypocrisy. And the internet, being the internet, made sure she never forgot it. If Jasmin's confession was the spark, the internet became the wildfire. Within hours, her Instagram post was screenshotted, reposted, and dissected like evidence in a public trial. Twitter threads turned into closing arguments. Instagram comments read like witness testimony. Podcasts and gossip blogs lined up to play judge, jury, and executioner. And Jasmin? She wasn't just a woman having a breakdown. She was now the case study in a morality play unfolding in real time. On one side of the courtroom were the critics, and they came out swinging. The harshest viral comments painted Jasmin as the architect of her own downfall. Girl, you had 4 kids with Kia, never married her, and you thought you were different? Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. She went from dragging pick-me's to being Cam's maid with benefits. Now she's crying? Couldn't be me. Jasmin really clocked into motherhood like it was a full-time job with no pay and no benefits. And the one that stuck hardest, she's not Cam's queen. She's Cam's Nick Cannon baby mama in training. These weren't just comments. They were cultural reminders, receipts from Cam's past, clips from Jasmin's own comedy skits, all being thrown back in her face. To the critics, Jasmin wasn't a victim at all. She was a cautionary tale. Proof that even the loudest anti-pick-me can fold when the right man flashes a smile, a status, and a storyline. But the other side of the courtroom, the sympathetic side, told a different story. Their tone wasn't mocking. It was heavy with recognition, with a kind of sad empathy that cut through the noise. Y'all are dragging her, but this is what toxic love looks like. Even strong women get caught in cycles they swore they'd never enter. This isn't funny. She sounds scared. She sounds like a woman realizing too late that the fairy tale she sold herself is really a nightmare. Everyone's saying she should have known better. Sometimes knowing better doesn't mean doing better when love is involved. And those takes hit just as hard because they expose the reality beneath the mess. Jasmin's situation wasn't new, wasn't unique, wasn't even rare. Women fall into these patterns every single day. The only difference is that Jasmin had millions of eyes watching when the mask finally slipped. Podcasts jumped on it immediately. Relationship shows framed it as a debate about modern women betraying their own standards. Gossip blogs called it the fall of Jasmin Brown, packaging her heartbreak into clickbait headlines. Instagram lives lit up with heated conversations, everyone weighing in like expert jurors in a trial that never had an end date. What made this saga so magnetic wasn't just Jasmin or Cam. It was what they represented. To some, it was the perfect cautionary tale about ignoring red flags. To others, it was a raw reminder that love can humble anyone, no matter how strong, outspoken, or independent they once were. And the internet, true to form, didn't let a single angle go unexplored. So while Jasmin might have written her confession in a moment of vulnerability, the second she pressed post, it stopped being just her story. It became everybody's story, a morality play acted out across platforms, where the jury was millions of strangers and the verdict kept changing by the hour. When you strip away the noise, the jokes, the gossip, the Instagram shade, one thing becomes painfully clear. The chaos around Cam Newton isn't new. It's not random. It's not accidental. It's a cycle, and he's been running the same playbook for over a decade. Look back at Kia Proctor, the woman who stood by him for years. For children together. A house, a life, a family that looked picture perfect from the outside. But marriage? Commitment? A real partnership? Cam never gave her that. What she got instead was court battles, custody fights, and a lawsuit over a Bentley. Because when the relationship collapsed, the family man image collapsed with it. Fast forward, and Jasmin Brown is living almost the exact same story, just with new clothes, new captions, and a new baby bump. It's the same behavior, the same contradictions. Cam still talks proudly about his children, but refuses to tie himself to one woman. He still brags about being a provider, but dismisses the very idea of marriage. He still talks about wanting a submissive woman who caters to him, while leaving behind a trail of women carrying the weight of his choices. And the internet didn't have to speculate about this pattern. Cam told on himself. On his own show, Funky Friday, a psychologist sat across from him and issued a warning so blunt it should have been carved in stone. You will selfishly create broken families. That wasn't a hater. That wasn't a bitter ex. That was a trained professional looking Cam in the eye and predicting exactly what we're seeing play out with Jasmin right now. But here's the tragedy. Jasmin walked into this with her eyes open. She wasn't some teenager blindsided by a charming athlete. She's a grown woman, a comedian who built a career on calling out pick-me behavior, someone who knew Cam's history because the receipts were already public. She knew what Kia went through. She heard his podcast clips. She watched the way he framed women, and she still chose to step into the same cycle. And now she's realizing too late that the pattern doesn't change, that the cycle doesn't end with her, that the same man who couldn't be the partner Kia needed is the same man she's lying next to at night, scratching his back to sleep, while wondering if she just doomed her child to repeat the cycle too. That's the bigger picture. Cam isn't the exception. Cam is the constant. The women change, the scenery changes, the Instagram aesthetics change, but the outcome stays the same. A trail of broken families, a man still proud of his legacy, and women who keep realizing the truth only when it's too late. And the cruel irony? Jasmine's Instagram confession may have been written about her unborn son, but it reads like she's talking about Cam. Nervous, traumatized, unsure if the man she built her life around is someone she can even respect. Which begs the question, was that post about her fears as a mother, or was it a quiet admission that she finally sees the cycle for what it is? So here's where the story hangs in the balance. Jasmine's Instagram confession felt raw, emotional, and unfiltered, but it didn't sound like the ending. It sounded like the beginning of a much bigger unraveling. Because if history tells us anything, Jasmine isn't about to pack up and walk away tomorrow. Women in these kinds of dynamics rarely leave at the first crack. More often they stay for pride, for the image, for the hope that they can prove the world wrong. And for Jasmine, the stakes are even higher. This isn't just her relationship. It's her public persona, her career, her identity as the woman who thought she could tame Cam Newton. Leaving now would mean admitting defeat, not just to herself, but to the millions of strangers waiting in the comments to say, "We told you so." But the cracks are showing, and if this was the first breakdown, it almost certainly won't be the last. The question isn't if Jasmine will unravel again. It's when and what it will look like. Maybe the next chapter is Cam stepping out with another woman, just as casual, just as unbothered, while Jasmine scrambles to hold the image together. Maybe it's Jasmine posting another tear-stained confession, this time not about her fears of motherhood, but about her exhaustion as a partner. Or maybe, and this is the twist nobody sees coming, the public turns on both of them. Cam for being unapologetically reckless with women's lives, and Jasmine for willingly auditioning for a role she once mocked, only to now beg for sympathy when the script didn't change. Whatever happens next, it won't be quiet. Cam's life has never been quiet, and Jasmine, whether she likes it or not, has now tied herself to that chaos. Her breakdown may have been whispered through an Instagram caption, but the echoes will carry through every gossip blog, every podcast, every timeline update until the next bomb drops. Because in the end, Cam hasn't changed one bit, but Jasmine has. And that's what makes this mess sting even more.